Welcome to Stories of Hope. I'm Christine Hotchkiss. Each week, I bring you the individual stories of individuals of hope and organizations making a difference in your community. I believe every story can help, heal, inspire, educate, and my biggest word of all is to give hope. With our current situation, I have a great guest to talk about it. My guest is Langely Obaugh. With approximately 30 years in public safety, probation and parole, and fire and rescue, she also has a master's in education and counseling and a Bachelor of Science degree in criminal justice, and soon will be certified as a trauma professional. Her business is called Stressed LLC, and it's also known as the Stress Reduction Spot. That is where she helps you work through stresses, loss, and trauma. And with the current event and the situation we've been dealing with for the last couple of years, we all could use some help and some hope. Please help me welcome my guest today, Christine. Hello, Christine.
Hi, thank you, Christine, for having me. I'm grateful.
Great name, thank you.
Absolutely.
Our current events, multiple, has a lot of people under stress and so many different uncertainties. And you are a specialist on helping us maybe identify those, include being vulnerable enough to say, you know what, I need to work through this so I don't keep feeling the way that I do daily or carrying my personal luggage and traumas and losses and stresses everywhere I go. Is that correct?
Yes, I help clients with stress, loss, and trauma. I'm trained in life stress reduction and traumatic incident reduction. We utilize applied metapsychology, so techniques and tools based on the client's perception of the incident. So the way I define a trauma, for example, is anything that leaves the client feeling helpless, hopeless, and unprepared. And the collective trauma that we've all been in recently has been COVID, my perspective. And so, yes, stress, loss, and trauma in my mind is all connected. And so in healing, I work with clients based on, their emotions, their physical body, where they're feeling certain things, and of course, soul growth as well. So mind, body, soul connects with it. So it's a more holistic approach. And I do not diagnose nor label because I think that leaves clients in a victim mode, kind of, that label attaches to them and they don't want to let that go. And, we can all have situational depression, for example, but it's temporary. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that you have depression for life. Mm-hmm. And there are certain things that we can do to combat anxiety and depression, such as magnesium, or looking at our magnesium levels. Please consult your doctors. But there are certain things that we can do from a supplement approach, or from an herbal approach, or from a nutritional approach that could aid and assist. Sometimes we will hang on to the emotion from the incident, even though the incident has been over with for several years. Right. So I talk to clients about healing all of that, anything that they feel is really heavy for them.
Well, and you mentioned the COVID. I say COVID, we say COVID. How long are we going to continue to say COVID? The truth of it is the emotions we go through, what this situation has done to each of us, personally and professionally. We have been all impacted, and I'm going to say globally. It's not just here in the States, it's globally. It's a matter of identifying what we're going through, not putting that label. That's why I said COVID again. That is a label that we continue to use, but in fact, we need to not use it, because what we're doing in our lives are not completely affected by it. Our lives have definitely been changed. We have been uprooted from our routines, uprooted from our normal, I don't like to use that word normal, because normal is different for everybody. But the labels is something that we have identified ourselves, like you said, and it's something we need to actually move away from. And so what you do is you help individuals not use that label and say, okay, you had this happen. You're okay to not be okay, but don't stay there. right? I've heard that many times over. One of the models that you have, I love this one, and this is helpful, is we repeat what we don't repair, and what we fear, we cover. And I feel that those two mottos are exactly what's going on right now. So how would you help an individual get through, let's say, for instance, loss? That loss, it depends on where you're at in your life. It could be physically, emotionally. How would you help someone even begin to get started on identifying that they need to get past that or get through it?
Well, when somebody comes to me and they're grieving a relative or somebody significant to them, um, that is what they're presenting with. But I will usually ask them if they've had prior losses, because a lot of times when somebody's grieving, it can bring up prior losses, especially if those have not been processed. I don't act as a counselor or a therapist, though, because I don't label. So I act more as an educator, facilitator, guide. I'm trained in life stress reduction, traumatic incident reduction. I can't remember if I said that. Um, I apologize if that's a duplicate. So what I would do is I would try to find out the significant losses in all of the significant losses, not just that one, to see if there are connections or triggers or similarities. A lot of times when somebody tells me a story, it could be how the news was delivered, for example. I had a client one time tell me about receiving bad news over the phone regarding her beloved pet, right? And it was very traumatic for her. And then she received bad news over the phone in the same fashion regarding her father, right? And so some people might not put that together, but in the way that I work, the way that I operate, I look at all of those different pieces to see how they connect. Because we do kind of tend to keep ourselves stuck, even though the incident is over, and we're holding on to that, whether it's fear or, being scared or sad or feeling alone, whatever feeling it is, right? We kind of have to acknowledge and identify, and then we work through some of that. I don't ever force my clients to talk about anything that they're not ready to talk about. I think that's important. I usually typically will say, tell me what feels really heavy to you. And then I'll use a distress interest scale rating chart for them to tell me how heavy an incident or a stressor or a loss is. And then I will ask them to also rate what their interest level is in processing that. And I usually will not touch anything that they're not ready to, most definitely I don't touch any of that they're not ready to go forward with. It's a process and everybody's very different. A lot of things that can also add to that loss, right, is how someone was raised, the environment that they grew up in, parents, if their parents were supportive, encouraging. I think there's so much that takes that tells the whole story. It's not I can't just have somebody come in and say, this is where I am right now. I need more information to kind of see, what it is in a whole totality, what the total picture looks like in order to be able to unlayer and process that with them.
And I want to share with everyone that loss, when we think of loss, it used to be one of those, it only identified the loss of a loved one, which I'm a certified grief recovery specialist. And I learned in that time frame that I was getting my certification that I had to do a timeline. And it wasn't about the loss of a loved one, even though I have experienced a couple of different times recently, and pets, like you'd mentioned, one of your clients. Grief is the loss of anything you once had and no longer have. So that could be like, for instance, with this situation we've been with the last couple of years of COVID, people lost jobs, lifestyles, homes, family members, the list goes on. I think there's like 45 different types of losses when you break it down to say, I no longer have this. And so then that goes into maybe the stresses of losses, like I mentioned, the different things. So how would you help someone identify the stresses? Because nobody's under stress.
Well, I think again, everything goes together, everything's connected. Stress, loss, and trauma are all connected. And depending on how we were raised, depending on what a client has gone through, especially before they've turned 18, especially before they've had full brain development. I'm a big proponent of the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, which is on the CDC website, which basically, there's a level of certain things that may have happened to a child under 18 that could impact their physical health later on. Kaiser did a study, and there's actually a quiz, Adverse Childhood Experiences quiz, based on certain things that have happened to the child in the home, if their parents were divorced, if a parent went to jail, if there was substance abuse, if the child was abused, those kinds of things. I was actually a 5 on that Adverse Childhood Experiences study, and out of a 10. And so if I can heal, anyone can heal. That's kind of, how I help people there a little bit. Like, I've been through a lot of things myself, as you have as well. And I think if people hear, understand and know that there's not going to be judgment, that there's not fear in talking with us, right? They're not going to be labeled or identified as wrong or bad, or, that we all go through these things. This is normal, to have stress, loss, and trauma. I think the positive about going through the collective trauma of COVID is that people have reprioritized what's important, right? People have said now, I'm realizing this relationship is toxic. I'm going to get rid of it. I've realized that I'm really not happy at my job, and it's really not fulfilling my heart anymore. It doesn't align with who I am. I think that needs to go, right? So hopefully people are doing that. I know I did that, got rid of a bunch of different things this past year, but it's really important to kind of reprioritize, but society, I think, as we've shared before in our conversation, society, I think, has us in a place of fear where we feel we have to be accepted. And so we conform, and that's not the truth. I think everybody should be free, right? If we allow relationships to be free flowing, and we don't try to control, and we, allow people to be authentic and vulnerable, and people do share, hopefully, their feelings and their thoughts instead of covering those up, I think we'd be a lot healthier. If people could do that, just with acknowledgement and learning and understanding what a healthy relationship is, because we're all very deserving of, relationships with communication and trust and love and respect and, all the things, right? We're all worthy.
Yeah. And you talk about how they all come together. Exposing, or should I say, being vulnerable is the most difficult thing anybody can do.
Yes.
But I've also learned, if you know who Brene Brown is, her great speech that made her known for her, what work she does, is being vulnerable also sets you free. But also with being vulnerable, you also have to, and I've learned this myself with relationships, personally and professionally, and through my own trauma, losses, the whole, the journey of life. Boundaries have to be set up. You have to set boundaries for yourself so that you can be a healthier you. And social media platforms, when they were created, I think they were created for us to be able to connect with people. With all that we've been through, people are making it all different things. Connecting with people, being opinionated, needing the acceptance. You said that a few minutes ago, that we need to be validated by our posts or our comments. And I came across this one this morning on a radio. I was listening to a radio show, And the lady says that the one thing she does that she wished she didn't do because it doesn't really mean much, but she's trying to make sure she doesn't hurt anyone's feelings, is that she likes all the posts that come through in her feed. And I'm like, I know there are people that hang on to that, but there really isn't much to hang on to when you're dealing with your own inner circle of things that you need to get past. And that goes, like you said, we're all worthy. And
Yes.
we definitely are all worthy of
Yeah.
happiness and the things that we dream and desire of.
I think too many people are in codependent relationships because we have been taught to people please, and we have been taught not to say no,
Yeah.
and just to do what we're told, right? But I think that after many, many generations of doing that, that has put us in a very
Unhealthy.
unhealthy place. Thank you. Yeah, it doesn't work, right? Unresolved trauma passes through the generations, and then one of us in a family is usually stuck with, uncovering, unlayering, and healing all of this stuff that our ancestors didn't. And so, and trying to understand it, wrap our heads around it, right? And so I think it is really, really something that people need to sit with and really take some time to assess. But who am I? What do I want? Where am I going? What are the life? Are they healthy? Do they, are they balanced, or is there give and take? Am I receiving, not just giving, right? Because a lot of empaths, a lot of people with huge hearts have a tendency to give way too much, and they don't receive. They have a really hard time receiving. And so I work with clients on balance a lot, because it's important to have balance in your life. You can't give 80% to your work and then 20%, to yourself or to your household or to, social time or what have you. It's just not balanced. And when we are out of balance as a society, things come crashing down. And when we are not feeling our feelings, right, our whole reality gets distorted and we're not seeing clearly. So, there's so much that impacts other things. That's why I say everything is connected. And it is important to kind of take a look at the whole picture, like I was talking about with a client, not just stress, loss, trauma, but the whole picture for an individual as well. So they can kind of see what areas they need to modify.
That is so very true. Boundaries, respect for yourself, respect for others, and balance. I'm the first one to admit there were a few years after my tragedy, and my tragedy is the passing of my 17-year-old daughter. My family and I were in a rollover accident. And so I was a part of that day, and she was ejected from our vehicle. And so I had a different view on life, and going through the stress, the loss, the trauma, identifying what my story was, put me on a whole different path. And the one thing I had to learn was boundaries. And so what I did do, and it said in your motto about, where was it here? Covering up, what we fear, we cover up. I was covering up my pain and all the things that were changing dramatically in my life. Everything completely changed in my life that I never thought would ever happen. And I think that's the comfort we get into, or the routine we get into. But I found myself running away from things and getting more involved with the community, even though my heart, I'm an empath. So I'm like, I want to help other people, but I didn't realize I wasn't helping myself. I was covering up my pain by helping other people, which is not bad, but I had to learn a balance on myself. And one day somebody said, gosh, Christine, you're everywhere. And I thought, that's a great thing. And then I realized it wasn't a great thing, because I wasn't giving myself any time to heal through what I went through. And a lot of us do that by staying busy, getting the recognition of what we do, but what are we doing for ourselves? And when those doors are shut and we're behind those closed doors, are we on the floor of our bathroom crying, I need help? Are we making posts that are making us look like we're happy when we're really, really sad and upset and hurt? Like Robin Williams, for instance. There's a lot of different situations. And so that is when I had to learn I needed a balance for myself, and I needed to put boundaries up as well. And so I
Right.
take that time. I don't say yes all the time anymore. I haven't for a long time. I have to have that. And I learned that I'm a healthier person and then I can deal with it. And I've moved as much as I can with the loss of a child. That's a difficult thing, but I make it look easy. So there are those days behind my closed doors where I am crying and I am saying, okay, God, tell me where I'm supposed to be going now, because I'm really not sure how I'm supposed to feel today. Because I'm a good person. I'm a happy person. I want to help people, but I'm also not going to have anyone break my boundaries and my barriers of what is good for me. So yeah,
Right.
balance is definitely one, like you said, that you have to put up and to face
Yes.
your indifferences and accept who you are and know that you're worthy, like you said, is all on you. It's a choice on you.
Absolutely. We are all flawed. None of us are perfect. And so if we can accept one another, my truth doesn't have to be your truth. If we can just accept one another, it doesn't mean we have to agree with everything that person agrees with or what have you. It's just basic acceptance, kindness, respect for one another, right?
Mhm.
Because a lot of us are more connected than you think. A lot of us have had very similar
Mhm.
incidences, or traumas or situations or backstories, and how we were reared, how we were raised in our homes are very similar. And I don't think people get to they really spend their time getting to know people anymore. And I think that we were just all raised in environments where our needs didn't matter. A lot of us were raised in environments where our needs didn't matter. And we were supposed to, people please and put other people first. And we didn't talk about our feelings. We didn't even identify our emotions. And that's sad because
Or we
now we're at
run,
this,
or
we
we
run,
run.
right?
Yeah, we run too.
Yeah. And so now we're at this place where, what is this that I'm feeling? And we're even having a hard time identifying the feelings that we're feeling, right? Because we were never taught certain things. We weren't taught how to self-love or self-accept or, have that self-confidence or that self-trust. And so I help my clients with all of that as well.
So before I ask my final question, I want to add in there, our view and our perception of the outside world is based on where we are in our own world. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. That we're all looking from our own lens, which is based on our own experiences, our worldview, our belief systems, whether they're true or false, right? Or even the thoughts, our programming, what we tell ourselves may not even be true, but that's how we're seeing things. Yeah.
Absolutely. Before this last question, I would love to give you the opportunity to give us information as to where you can be found in the event that someone wants to reach out to you and say, you know what, I'm ready to start the process of healing on the inside. How can I do that? Where can you be found?
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I'm grateful. I can be found on Facebook and Instagram under the Stress Reduction Spot. I am also, you can email me, Christine at stressedllc.com, STREST LLC.com. And my website, stressedllc.com. It is currently being redesigned, a new logo. So I've had my company for about 8 years, and it was time to kind of do an overhaul, new look. And because I've changed so much in the past 8 years as well. So my website is also available, and I do a variety of different things. Again, I don't act as a counselor or a therapist. I don't diagnose. So it's important for me not to label. And because it's normal for us to have stress, loss, and trauma in my mind. And so I don't label because I don't want somebody to attach to that. But I would be grateful if anybody wanted to reach out or if anybody needed any information, I'd be happy to assist.
And labels keep us captive in our situation versus breaking from them. So I love that you said that. My final question is this. What message would you like to leave our listeners based on your journey?
I would like to leave your listeners with the fact that we are all powerful people. And that if people are committed and dedicated to changing and healing, then they're going to be successful. So I think that it is very important for people to live a fulfilled life and to have happiness and joy, and to uncover anything that has been covered up, to mask who they really are so they can live authentically. So that's what I hope to help people with, is healing and living authentically and finding their life purpose.
Absolutely agree with you 100%. And as we know, we're going to constantly be changing. I'm going to have a t-shirt that says permanently under construction.
Right.
Because I am. There's not a day I'm going to think that I'm going to be this perfect image that I have, like I'm reaching for. It's like, okay, I'm going to have all these different things happening on. So I'm going to be constantly under construction.
We are all flawed. Yes, I will take a t-shirt as well. Thank you.
Perfectly broken, flawed, and under construction.
Yes, there you go.
Thank you, Christine, for being my guest today. I truly appreciate your time and your knowledge and being able to help other people move forward through stress, loss, and trauma.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and thank you to my listeners for listening in on yet another amazing story on how someone's making a difference in her community. If you want to reach out to her, she gave you that information, or you can reach me. And if you have a story you want to share, know someone who has a story, or you have an organization making a difference in your community and you want them to be heard, please email me to the address of stories@christinehotchkiss.com, or visit me on my website and learn more about who I am and why I'm doing what I'm doing, sharing your stories and the organizations making a difference in your community. And that would be at www.christinehotchkiss.com. Until next time, everyone, I wish you well, and you take care.